afternoon, and welcome to Coffee with a Kick live. Not for you, but for us. I see him. He's sitting right over there, not even on the other side.
In person.
Of the internet.
Wow.
Boy, well, the season's over. Even the FA Cup is over. The only thing we got left is that this upcoming weekend, we've got a Champions League final, which I guess we'll do a prediction for. We didn't really talk about that, but I guess we'll do a quick predict at the end of this episode or so.
Yeah.
But before we get there, what we're going to do is we are going to talk about what we predicted at the beginning of this season for placement as far as the table. We did top 4, bottom 3. I think next season we do a full 20.
We might as well.
Might as well do a full 20 for next season when we get around to it. But that's a long ways off. After that, we're going to go into best and worst transfers from the summer of last summer. Best and worst individual season, so a player's individual season. Best and worst seasons as a team. And the results may surprise you. I don't know. I have no idea
some
what
answers
this looks like.
some of these guys you may have forgotten about.
That is how bad they were.
Because I forgot about them as we were looking it up.
Well, we'll talk about strategies as we go through it. But first, we'll go ahead and do what we decided to do first, which is, of course, our predictions from the beginning of the season. If you go all the way back to the episode that was Premier League season predictions plus match day 1 preview.
We may put a card up in the corner if that's helpful for you guys.
I don't know where I'll be. Right there. Sure.
Not that you'll want to go watch it, but
listen, we were wee babes in the season and in recording. I don't know. I had already done a couple seasons with Hunter, but it was one of our first episodes, second episode together, I think.
First one was, I think, kit review.
First one was our hour and 15-minute kit review, which you can watch right here.
It's just crazy amount of time.
I think it was warranted. I think it
should have been longer. I think
it should have been. I mean, we should have done more in-depth dives on that. Is typically how dives work. They're more in depth. Anyways, at the beginning of the season, I said that the top 4 would be Manchester City, Tottenham Hotspur, Arsenal, and Manchester United. And you said it would be Manchester City, Newcastle, Liverpool, and Aston Villa. So you, my friend.
3 perfect placements.
3 perfect placements is absolutely correct. And then 1 Newcastle, not so perfect.
Yeah.
But, that's 3 out of 4. I got 2 and not perfect placements, but I at least got Arsenal up there in the top 4, which you did not. Now, Manchester United, listen. They had such as you'll see as we go through this, I give Manchester United their comeuppance for having their worst season ever, I think is what it was.
Worst Premier League season ever.
They may feature prominently on these upcoming lists.
Yeah.
And then Tottenham, I think Tottenham is still arguably could have been top 4 very easily. If they hadn't played so terribly the last stretch of this season when Aston Villa was also faltering, they could have wound up at 4th. But various injuries came through, and they lacked the end of season drive that the top teams ended up having, specifically Arsenal and Manchester City. But we both picked City because,
why not? 4 in a row.
Yeah.
If they have Pep, you just got to pick them.
If they have Pep and they haven't been destroyed by financial fair play penalties, then you got to pick them. Like it's daring not to pick them to win the Premier League is what it is. As you can see, I've got a really cool mug here.
We are in the 500 sub club.
500 sub club.
So since YouTube does not give us anything for 500 subs, we took it upon ourselves.
It says something very nice here on the back. It says, why don't you go and grab some coffee, watch some soccer, and we'll see you on the other side. Like and subscribe if you've heard that before.
Yeah, that's the classic sign-off from Zander. So,
which you all absolutely have down pat. You probably quote it with me as I go through the end of the episode. But that is... Oh, right. And then the bottom half of the table.
Yep.
The bottom 3 relegants. I didn't get any of them correct. I said my Wolves were going to get relegated. I said Bournemouth would get relegated. And I said Nottingham Forest would get relegated. I got one pretty close.
You were close.
One of them tried their best. My Wolves tried their best to get relegated, but they'd done too well in the first half of the season to not be relegated. And Bournemouth did much better than I thought, which also plays into some of my picks later on.
Yep.
Then for you, you had Everton Brentford, and Sheffield United, which you didn't have Sheffield United in last. I think you had them in 18th, if I recall.
No, I had them in last.
You had them in last?
Everton was 18th, Brentford 19th. I had Sheffield last.
Sheffield last.
I didn't think they would be as bad as they were.
Yeah.
But they had them last.
But Everton, not a great pick. Brentford, yeah. Anyways, we did better. It's picking the teams that got promoted to get relegated, I feel is just too pessimistic.
Yeah, you want to be optimistic.
You want to at least have
Burnley.
some
I mean, they had one of the best championship seasons ever.
Yes, and they I think they just didn't transition quickly enough to the Premier League. I think if the league year had started at the midway point,
February they did fine.
Yeah, once you got to the end of the season, they started doing like marginally, but not marginally. They did significantly better.
I mean, it was like a 9-game match unbeaten streak.
Yeah, I mean,
and to have that near the end of the season and still get relegated by a fine margin shows how just bad they were to begin the season.
Very bad to start off. But that's how we did at the beginning of the season. Not great, but it's hard to judge when we only have 7 out of the 20 teams picked. So we'll amp up that prediction process for next season and really get fine-tuned in there on how poorly or how well we may have picked. But we'll move on from that topic to our next one, which is, of course, best transfers of the off season.
Yeah.
I'll let you do the honors here. What was your? What do you actually? Have
I'll start out at number 3.
Okay, it's your number 3. All right.
And then after we go through the list, I at least have a couple of honorable mentions.
I came up with a couple as well.
Yeah. Number 3, best signing was, for me, David Raya. So 16 clean sheets, Golden Glove. I mean, he was at Brentford last year. Arsenal didn't need another goalkeeper. Aaron Ramsdale played just fine last year. They bring in Raya to kind of give him some competition, and he took his spot and won the Golden Glove. So for that, without him, they don't finish second. So I got to give him number 3.
For number 3, I have Declan Rice, who I thought he came in. Like, you look at his stat line, and it wasn't tremendous. 7 goals, 8 assists. But the way that he managed the midfield there for Arsenal helped them stay coordinated and organized.
Yep.
Good under pressure there, keeping possession. I think that he was expensive, but I mean, you finished second.
Yeah.
You very easily could have finished first.
Yeah.
I think it was a good signing.
They needed that reliability at that position.
Yeah. That release valve. You can always give it to Declan, and he's going to come through for you.
My number 2 is a bit unconventional. Number 2 is Chris Wood. Really? And here is my justification. He had 14 league goals this season, which was 28.5% of Nottingham's goals.
Total production.
So without him, literally, they would have been relegated, no questions asked. He kept them up. I think that's a signing, that number 2 signing of the season. Like, what a signing.
For me, and mine aren't necessarily in order of 1, 2, 3, but this is the order that I put them in, so it had to mean something. I put Mickey Van de Ven by Tottenham, the defender. I thought that he really helped their back line and even got 3 goals on top of it.
Yeah.
So Tottenham, like I said, they could have done much better this season than they ended up doing. They had some very pivotal injuries in the mid-season that kind of hurt their offensive production. But I think he was a reasonable price and came through for them in the end.
Yeah, would not have had him on my bingo card. So I'll give you that one. That's a good one. My number 1, it might be obvious, but Cole Palmer. It would probably also your number 1.
That's my number 1 as well.
22 goals, 11 assists, and no one saw it coming. Maybe Pep did. Pep Guardiola did say he really wanted him to stay, but Cole wanted to go be the main man, and he was.
Yeah, and I think that I'll say his name multiple times. I'll just go ahead and spoil that for you, because he was Chelsea this season. Like when he wasn't on the pitch, you could tell that they were missing that piece, and he was the best signing of the offseason. I don't think there's any real argument there that he made the biggest impact regardless of price for the season. What were your honorable mentions?
Yeah, Declan Rice, barely beat out by Raya. I just feel like that goalkeeper position is slightly more important. I mean, 16 clean sheets is a lot.
It's a lot.
So that pushed it forward. Honorable mention Rice, I had James Madison.
I
had Kudus for West Ham. He really propelled them.
Mohamed Kudus.
And then I had Vardiol for City, especially in the game that he scored 2 goals and basically won it for us single-handedly. Had he not scored those goals, we don't win the title. He was great. So he was my honorable mention.
I had Madison and Gvardiol as well. I think that at the beginning of the season, he was finding, and actually I also had Doku on here for City. I feel like both of them start off trying to get into the flow of how Pep works.
Yeah.
Gvardiol really came on at the end of the season. You could really see how he's going to function very well, especially looking forward with probably City losing Kyle Walker.
Yeah, just don't watch the FA Cup. And you'll be like, oh, Vardy had a great season. Don't watch the FA Cup.
By the way, City lost the FA Cup.
That's all we'll say about it.
That's all we're going to say about it because we both said they probably won and then they ended up losing.
Yeah.
They only got a treble this year. If you count the treble as
could have been 6. We only got 3.
The Club World Cup. What was the other one? I mean, the Premier
Super
League,
Copa.
Super Copa.
So Champions League winner versus Europa League winner.
There you go. That's an even playing field. All right, and then I also had Madison. His injury. I saw some people putting him on like the disappointment list, but his injury.
He was injured. Yeah.
The first half of the season, he was working so well with Son.
Yeah.
Up at the top of Tottenham's attack that when he got injured, they were devastated. Like Tottenham fell apart at that point. That's part of the reason why they didn't get up in the top 4 like I thought they would. Now we move over to the mean side of things, the worst transfers of the off season. I'll start this one here. And mine are, like I said, mine are in no particular order, but I have
mine are in a particular order.
I have Moises Caicedo for Chelsea. Moises Caicedo. They spent over £100 million on this guy.
The record.
And do you know what you get for that as a midfielder? You get 1 goal and 4 assists. 13 shots only on goal. It's not his main thing, but still, it's a lot of money and not a lot of production when we're talking about one of their other signings. And maybe it's that Cole Palmer ended up absorbing a lot of what they thought Caicedo might be able to assist with. But even so, that's a lot of money and not a lot of production.
Yeah, it wasn't even the offensive production, but as a CDM, he provided no impact whatsoever for what a CDM should be.
Yeah.
Like Declan Rice. That's a CDM. Rodri, that's a CDM.
Yeah.
Caicedo, I don't think he understood what position he was in.
Stability, reliability, getting back and covering. A lot of missed opportunities there for Moises Caicedo.
Yeah, his only goal was in the very last match day from almost midfield. Impressive goal. Doesn't matter. I feel like if he had played up to his price tag, Chelsea probably is in the Champions League. Yeah. But he was my number 1.
Okay. Yeah. I mean... well, then, if that was your number 1, what was your number 2?
Rasmus Højlund.
He's also listed second on my list.
He got 10 goals and 2 assists. But I think that because Man U finished the worst they've ever finished, I think 7 of his goals came from bottom 3 teams. So it's like, what kind of impact is that actually? So I think he was just really disappointing. Especially for his price tag, he was for his 74 million euros.
74. You're paying 2 million euros per shot almost.
Yep. Yeah.
Actually, more than because he only had 36 shots this whole season. And you paid 2 million.
Yeah, Man, you had a lot of issues, but Højlund did not help those issues.
Certainly did not. And my other bad signing doesn't help either. Onana, good old what is his first name? Hold on.
Andre
Onana.
Yeah.
Only 9 clean sheets the whole season, 57 goals against. I mean, and they had defensive problems on Manchester United, so you could chalk some of that up. But there are also a lot of moments. He was very uneven throughout the season. There were some games where he'd be like very good.
FA Cup. Yeah. He played like a elite goalie.
Very good at some, but then on others, like he's just making boneheaded plays. Just knocking it down into the box, giving it right to them. For the price tag, I feel like he did not come through for them in the end. And, them having their worst finish ever certainly doesn't paint a pretty picture.
So he was your number 2.
He was, my number 2 was also Rasmus Højlund, and then I had Onana as number. I had him 3rd on the list. I think I initially had him as number 1, but like I said, mine are just, they're bad,
Yeah, my number 3 was Sandro Tonali, £64 million. Only played in, I think, 13 games, scored 1 goal, got hurt, then got suspended for betting for a whole year.
Yeah.
And to spend that much money on a player who had just basically captained AC Milan to a Serie A title not too long before he was transferred. Comes in and bust. This was Newcastle spending money, and it just not working out. So, yeah, he was my number 3. Honorable mentions. This was a January move, but Giovanni Reina. He loaned to Nottingham, did nothing, got beat out by Ole Aina, Hudson-Odoi, people he shouldn't be getting beat out by. Then Ryan Gravenberch was another honorable mention. Bayern to Liverpool, did absolutely nothing.
Nope.
And then Robert Sanchez, goalkeeper from Brighton to Chelsea. Started the season, and then Chelsea were in 13th with him when they replaced him. And then they were 6th with the other guy. So they spent £30 million on a guy they didn't need. And the backup from, I think, the academy came up and took his place. So that's a pretty bad sign.
I'm not saying you were the problem, but I'm also saying that we gained
But the
7
stats don't
positions.
lie.
Yeah.
The stats don't lie.
I'm not saying it was only you, but it certainly helped us getting rid of you. That is tough. All right, so that's our best and worst transfers.
Did you have any honorable mentions?
For worst transfers, I did not have any honorable mentions.
Just leave it to the top 3.
Yeah, just leave it to the top 3.
Big enough bloodbath.
That's what I've got for the rest of this stuff here. We'll move to best and worst seasons now. It's a shade different than transfers, because you could have players who've been with the team and played worse than some of these. Because even like we were saying, some of these people had decent seasons. It's just that they weren't living up to the hype or the amount of money that they had been paid for. So, do you want to start us off here with best? I'll go ahead and say Cole Palmer was on my list already, and we've already talked about. Was he on your list? He was
number 2. He was number 2.
All right, so he was number 2 on your list. I think I had him number. I have him, like I said, mine aren't in order of actual best to worst. I just have he was on my list. He's technically listed as number 1. Arguably could have had the best team, but I think my second person listed will probably be on your list as well. Good old Philly Foden. Phil Foden, I have on my list for best seasons. Losing both Erling Haaland and Kevin De Bruyne for, I think it ended up being the majority of the season.
Haaland was out 2 months. De Bruyne was out like 4.5.
Yeah. He was out for, I think it was November and December. Haaland was out. Yeah. So not exactly half the season, but a lot of matches are stuck in there. But yeah, I have. Phil Foden was able to take over at that point. His numbers aren't extremely gaudy.
I don't know. 19 goals, 11 assists. A lot of those coming in really crucial games.
Yes, and he was also involved in the build-up play a lot as well. A lot of organization in that, and he really stepped up his game in this season. And you feel like you can actually see him helping to ease the burden of when Kevin De Bruyne eventually is gone.
Yeah. Foden and Rodri were tied at number 3 for me because Rodri had 8 goals, 9 assists, both his highest. He also went the entire Premier League season not losing a match. The 3 that City lost, he was either suspended or he was injured for a match.
It's like the opposite of that goalkeeper. I'm not saying that you're the reason we lost, but you not being there, we only lost when you weren't.
Yeah, which is incredible. So, he's got a 35. I think going to last season, it's now up to 51 Premier League games unbeaten streak, which is insane. So he was number 3. My number 1 was Ollie Watkins. 19 goals, 13 assists, and he, I think, not single-handedly, but his stats rose Aston Villa to the Champions League spot, and we saw how much that meant to them. So I think, for me, he was the most impactful player this season. I'm kind of biased towards City, but I would not have been mad if he would have gotten player of the season because I feel like he just really came through for Aston Villa. All of his stats were higher, and they're Champions League. That's huge.
He was on my list as well. I mean, he started all but one game this season, 19 goals, 14 assists, pivotal in a team that played better than we thought they would, by and large, this season.
I had some honorable mentions.
Oh, okay.
It's Dominic Solanke.
Solanke, yeah.
Jean-Philippe Mateta. Had to. I mean, 16 goals in the last 18 match weeks. Crazy.
Yeah.
And then I had Bukayo Saka. He did not play so well when they needed him to near down the stretch, but he did play pretty well during the season. So I'll give him that. He's an honorable mention.
Guys who put together like incredible stretches, but not full seasons.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Then to worst seasons, I'll go ahead and list off. I did have Onana on my list.
Really?
Because I think he was part of the reason why United was so low.
You're right. I mean, there was like match week 4 to like match week 20 where people were saying he was going to get transferred out in January.
Yeah.
You didn't know if he was going to get dropped. And like you said, one match, he's like the king. Yeah. He's playing like he was at Inter Milan. He's crazy. The next match, he's getting 4 put past him by Brighton or whoever it was. So I can respect that.
Another one. I'll go ahead with another one. I don't know if this is just a personal animus, but I feel like Darwin Nunez had a terrible season. Like he scored. He scored 11 goals. He had 8 assists, but he missed so many clear-cut opportunities. Like if Erling Haaland hadn't still won the Golden Boot, he would be on this list because he had so many opportunities that he just totally biffed. Yeah. I think that Darwin Nunez is what Erling Haaland's season could have been. Because only 11 goals on 106 shots. You're converting less than about just over 10% of your shots into goals as a striker, as a forward. That's not a great conversion
on an attacking team.
On an attacking team.
One of the most attacking teams.
Where you're not even like the most, where you're not the focus of the defense.
Yeah.
I mean, that's going to be Mo Salah. So you're an outlet for people who are better than you, and you still can't do it. I know he hit like the woodwork. I think you said in one match he hit it like 6 times. So I'm sure over the course of the
team
season,
as a whole hit it 6 times. I think he hit it like 4.
Yeah, and I felt like it was just like that all the time. And then he would just disappear for large stretches of the matches.
Yeah.
So I have him on my list. I was not impressed with him. People were saying that he was going to compete with Haaland for Golden Boot, and I'm like, who are you watching? Who are you watching?
Yeah, that was the talk last year.
Yeah,
and he shows signs.
Yeah,
but he's kind of like the poor man's Edison Cavani. He's got the flair. He's got the Uruguayan blood. But yeah, he's not impactful. My number 3, won't spend much time on him, but was Caicedo again. Just felt like he had a terrible season. Number 2 was Gabriel Jesus. You don't hear anyone talking about him in this Arsenal team, and he was bought to be their guy. He had 4 goals, 5 assists. He was hurt for a little bit of the season, but I mean, he came back and couldn't even get his spot back. He was really a role player, and he went to Arsenal to not be a role player. And sure enough, he's right back to where he was at City. So I don't know what he'll do this summer. My number 1 was Antony. Again, another huge, I think, £75 million price tag.
Yep.
Comes in last year, shows a little bit of flair. People are expecting him to jump up year 2. Does so bad that Ten Hag benches him. And that was his guy at Ajax.
Yeah.
Like, they both came together, but he was like, you're just not the same guy. So 1 goal, 1 assist, not cutting it out for a guy of his stature. So he was my number 1 worst.
My other worst is Evan Ferguson from Brighton Hove Albion. A forward for them. He's only 19 years old, so he's a young stud, all right?
He was good last year.
He was supposed to be so good this year. Comes in 6 goals all season on 15 starts and 12 subs. 0 assists. I mean, that's not a lot of production from a forward.
Especially from a team that, I mean, early on, Brighton was scoring.
Yeah. Brighton had high hopes at the beginning of the season.
Yeah.
But then they just fell off a cliff. And Evan Ferguson disappearing helped that accomplish the end result.
My honorable mentions. I had Tonali on here. Won't spend any time on him. I had Danjuma, who Everton picked up from Villarreal. He was like almost the La Liga player of the season last year. And they bring him back. I think they loaned him. And yeah, he did nothing. Absolutely nothing. He was getting, who was it? Oh, man. Was it Townsend? I think Townsend was beating him out. I'm like, why is Townsend? Nothing to transfer Townsend. Whatever. Danjuma did not play well up to his price tag. And then Anthony Martial was my other one. He, again, another guy, huge amount of potential, just not working out. So he was my last on the list of worst seasons.
Yeah, we covered some bad seasons here.
Yeah.
And you know what? We laid off all the Sheffield United players. You know, we didn't go. We could have put their whole squad on here for that, really, especially their defense. But we'll leave that for this upcoming section, which is best and worst seasons as a team.
Yeah.
I'll let you lead off here for best seasons for teams.
My number 3 here is I got to go with Crystal Palace, especially from match week 20 to match week 38. They would have had a top 4 finish. So for me, I mean, that pegs, I think they end up finishing 10th. So finishing top 10 is huge for them. And that manager switch, it only took him 2 weeks to turn it around. So for me, that alone is good enough to get them up there. What about you? Who is your...
I've got...
Not that they're in an order, but...
So, yeah, mine aren't in order. But going off of what my preseason predictions were, I think Bournemouth had a very surprisingly good season. I think they ended up... let me get my list back up here.
I think they were 12th, right?
Yeah, I finished 12th. I had them going 18th. So obviously I was not expecting much. And they had a couple stretches in the season where they looked very competent as a side. And I just thought that I was impressed with them this season. They came through in times where I didn't think they would, and then disappointed when I trusted in them. But that happens for a lot of teams.
You know, Bournemouth, the Indy 500 was today. And Bournemouth felt like an Indy 500 driver. You may not be the one in front the entire time. You may not even be in the position you want to be in, but you're playing the long game. So like you said, Bournemouth, they'd lose 3-0 to like Everton. Yeah. And then they'd go and they'd beat someone 2-1, and then they'd beat someone else, and then they lose to City 5-0.
Yeah.
So it was like they knew the game's like, all right, we know we're going to lose it. Let's not even try.
Let's get the ones we can get, all right? Let's get the ones we can get.
And it worked out. They got 12th.
Yeah.
They're on my honorable mentions list. Number 2, Aston Villa. Champions League finish. You have to give it to them. Incredible season, even though they faltered at the end. Because like we were saying, they didn't want to be number 1. Nope. They didn't want to be number 2. They didn't even want to be 3rd place, but they held on to 4th place.
And not of their own volition, just because Tottenham wouldn't do anything.
Just because Tottenham was so bad.
But that's kind of that was what it was back when they were in second. It's like they wouldn't take first, but no one would take second from them. Yeah, eventually, City got around to it. Aston Villa also graced my list. I had them listed first. My other team on here was Arsenal. Arsenal, I mean, they came through. They finished. They were pressing City as hard as they've been pressed back since, what was it, last season, I guess, when it was super close. But Arsenal, their young side, they will be competing with City for the next couple seasons for that Champions League, Premier League crown.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to be, there's not a lot of loss here that I'm seeing from Arsenal's side that makes me think that they're going to regress it all.
Yeah, they feel like Liverpool did in like 2017, 2018. Then Liverpool won it 2 years later. But Arsenal was on my honorable mentions. Chelsea was the other honorable mention alongside Bournemouth. City is my number 1. Because they won and because they only led the Premier League for 3 weeks. The entire season.
See, that's why
3 weeks.
That's why I couldn't put them on here.
It was amazing. We didn't even have to lead the entire year. We just had to come in at the end and win it.
The argument can go either way, right? It's like they only led for 3 weeks, so how can you put them on this list? But they also overcame probably some of the most significant injuries that they have in recent memory to win the thing. And they still won the thing, you know? Yeah. They were missing Kevin De Bruyne, arguably their best player, for 4.5 months. Yeah. They're missing their top goal scorer for 2 months.
He was even in the team, and he was still missing for a while there.
He somehow still managed to be the top goal scorer. It's incredible, but he wasn't incredible, and that makes it incredible. It's a strange quantum entanglement. I don't know.
Yeah, who knows what kind of physics we're going into now. Arsenal, I feel like I couldn't put them on the list because they lost. I felt like they were on top for 11 weeks of the season.
That's fair.
And I felt like, especially at the end, I couldn't put them on my best season list because they wanted the Premier League and they didn't get it.
I just feel like they're a little bit ahead of schedule for this year. That's why I put them on the list. Yeah. But then to the juicy ones here. Worst seasons. I think I can speak for both of us. I think Sheffield United has to be on this list.
Yeah, they're my number 2.
Yeah. Sheffield United. We've spoken about it plenty. Arguably one of the worst teams to ever play in the Premier League statistically.
I think they are. Mainly because the other team that has the goal difference record that they just tied with did it in 42 matches.
42 matches.
And then Derby County, they only missed it by 4 points. But every other stat, Derby County was better. So, yeah, I think...
We're splitting hairs here whether or not they're worst or one of the worst teams to ever grace the Premier League.
It's really just they're either one or they're number two.
Yeah.
We don't know yet.
It's a close battle. I won't say that. Then what was your second worst season?
Well, that was my second worst. My first worst, if that's even a phrase, was Man U. Mainly because it was their worst season ever. Yeah. I mean, they had I think they finished the season at a -1 goal difference. In 8th or 7th, wherever they finished, at a -1 goal difference.
8th at a -1 goal difference.
Yep.
Yeah.
Our statistician here
actually
confirmed. He's got it pulled up because we want to be right on this podcast. We don't want to deliver fake news. We want to be right. -1 goal difference. They won the FA Cup, so that's a good booster. But, I mean, they really did not play well. And somehow they just had so many 1-0, 2-1, 1-0 wins that like kept them in it. But I don't know. For me, that made it the worst season because they did have such high expectations.
Yeah.
And then the worst Man U finish ever.
It's a blemish on the brand. They're on my list as well. It's just you can't. I know I've been beating them up on this episode with Onana and Højlund, but listen.
Don't be bad if you don't want to get beat up.
Yeah, get good, bro. If you don't want to be bad, get good. Okay. The other team I had on here, Newcastle United. They had so much potential coming out of last season. Their defense was solid. They were looking good, but then they come in this season. They just kind of don't do anything. They just kind of disappear. We had so much hope for them, and they end up. I mean, 7th place. They had a great goal difference, but they had like a couple matches where they scored like a lot, but then they would go on these droughts where they were just not great.
Yeah. Yeah, my third worst was Liverpool, mainly because they led for 13 match weeks out of the season, the most out of any team. And they just fell off at the end. Yeah. I mean, really, match week 30 to 35, they fell off. And for me, like, it being Klopp's last season, I don't know if they announced that early to get them to, like, roar towards the finish line, but they didn't. They meowed to that finish line. And I just felt like it was a disappointing season for them, given the fact that they got in a lot of new transfers, a lot of really big transfers. Still had Nunez, and I don't know. I think that to me, that gets them on my list. I had honorable mentions. I had Nottingham Forest. Yeah. I had Everton. I had Burnley. I feel like those three teams should have definitely fought above their weight, and oftentimes they didn't. The other two just did enough to stay ahead.
Yeah. And that brings us to the end of our Premier League wrap-up.
Yeah.
The only thing we have left to do here today is Champions League is this upcoming weekend.
Yeah. You can tell that we care a lot about that, but I don't know. I mean, Real Madrid, Dortmund, in London. I think Dortmund wins it 2-1 after extra time.
Really? I'm going to say it's actually 2-0 Real Madrid. They're away. I mean, if we were at the yellow wall, I think that Dortmund could definitely hang with Real Madrid. But
because they played so well against PSG at PSG, that's why I feel like I have some faith in them. It does give you
confidence. Yeah. But I think that Real Madrid takes it. You know, they vanquished City without actually beating them technically.
Yeah, crazy.
But I said back when that happened, I felt like that was the Champions League final, Real Madrid and City, because both those teams are just very good.
Champions League, you need to start getting like the NCAA tournament or the NBA playoffs or the NFL playoffs or every other tournament and league in history where they seed the teams. So the good teams
that's what you're saying.
Come in at the finals and it's not just a random draw.
Yeah,
they'll never do that, but I wish.
Yeah. I think it's because they're trying to make sure that you still care throughout the group stage, right? You want to be the group stage winner, But then they can still seed the group.
They
like,
could
the group
still seed
winners.
it. I think they should, but they won't.
I mean, they have all the metrics for it. It's not like they don't have club rankings.
That's true.
It's all tracked and managed, so they could very easily do it. But at whatever reason, they don't. They just don't want to give us what we want. That's all what it boils down.
No, they don't. They don't.
But so 2-0 for Real Madrid, 2-1
Dortmund.
after extra time for Borussia Dortmund. I'm just looking for a good, like I've said many times throughout this last couple weeks of Champions League action. I'm just looking for a good match. That's all I'm looking for. I'm just looking for a good match. That's all I'm looking for. All right. Well, I don't think we have any trivia today because we're down to like one episode a week right now. In fact, that would probably be the schedule through the summer. It's probably just
we got the Olympics. We got the Copas, I think.
Copa. We also have European.
The Euros. We have the Euros. So we'll be back. Maybe we'll do a full prediction of those.
Hey, listen.
That way we get the old practice.
We will come back to you on that in the next episode. We'll have more of an idea of what the summer will look like.
Yeah.
Before coming back in full force next season.
Ready.
But until then, let me do this. Hold on one second. There we go. Why don't you go ahead and grab some coffee, watch some soccer,